acetylene welding. I'm going to show you how to set up your regulator tanks, how to safely use your torch, and how to do some basic fusion welding with some flat bar. This is just regular steel. So first off, setting up your tanks, we've got two here. We have an oxygen tank and we have an acetylene tank. I have a little rhyme that I follow for all of these steps. It's always going to be A before O, acetylene before oxygen, or up you go. Don't ask me why, but it's going to help you remember every single step. So before I get started setting up my tanks, I need to make sure that my torch and everything has been set up correctly. We need to make sure that the tip, there's a tiny little hole here. We need to make sure that the tip is clean. It's hard to see. You need to make sure the tip is clean. If you do need to clean it, and you can tell once you actually start welding, you can use a tip cleaner. Tip cleaners look something like this. You need to pick the right size for the one that fits in that hole. First, we're going to do the acetylene first. We're going to open up the main valve here half a turn. So if this is my start, I want it to get to here. And I've drawn a little line here to help remember. Half a turn. Now the last person who used this did not purge the valves, but usually when you get to it, let me just purge that valve for a second. Release the pressure on my regulator. There we go. This is basically how much fuel is left in the cylinder, and this is how much pressure will be coming through. So in order for me to increase pressure that is going to be coming out of my torch, I'm going to have to adjust the regulator. I'm going to open up the knob on my torch handle for the acetylene or the fuel. Just open it up. Don't worry about how big it is yet. And I'm going to adjust the regulator here. I'm going in the plus. You can see plus or minus. I'm going plus, and I'm going to increase it to about 6 psi. There we go. We're at 3, 4, 5, 6. If you look very closely there, and you can hear the acetylene actually coming out. Go ahead and turn off your knob. This one is set and ready to go. Next, we have our oxygen tank. We need to adjust this till we have between, I'm going to say 5 and 10 psi coming out of this. We're going to open this valve all the way until it stops. We're going to take our torch handle, open up the oxygen, adjust the regulator until we have between 8 and 10 psi. It's hard to see the numbers, but we just need that little valve needle to show it just a little bit. Right there, that's good. Turn off your torch valve. So if you look closely, you can see that the needle on the left is just open a little bit. And down on the acetylene, it's around 6. Let's zoom in there a little bit. You can see that the PSI is just about 6. If you look on the left dial, you can see that there's a red zone. Do not push acetylene past 15 PSI. Next, you need to have some sort of eye protection. We're going to be using a number 9 screen here. This allows it to protect your eyes, to fill in our gaps, maybe give it a little bit more strength, a little bit more material in there. I find this is actually easier to get my puddle started and control. Let's do this. So once again, light your torch. Just a little bit. I want a nice little flame. I'm going to increase the pressure until it's feathered again. Add my oxygen. I'm going to do my tack weld with my filler rod by heating the two up together to get it almost a puddle. I like to get this nice and hot before just sticking a cold rod on top of there. Just a quick tack. And do the same thing to the other end before it expands or contracts. Go evenly between your two pieces. Now it's getting kind of hot. I can tell it's about to go molten. I'm going to throw a little bit of filler rod in there. Just enough to hold it together. This one's not for strength. Now increase your acetylene until it's feathered. That black smoke goes away. Increase your oxygen until you have that nice little cone, and let's weld. Heat this up until it gets molten, and then we're going to start adding our filler material. So I want to get that puddle started before I add filler material, because I really want to make sure that the metal is melting, not just my rod. Here we go. Puddle's starting. I'm going to do circle, dip, circle, dip, circle, dip. There, get a little bit more of a puddle going. There we are. And I just kind of circle dip, maybe every 1 or 2 circles. Let this go forward. I'm going to stop there and we can take a look at it. Acetylene and then oxygen. So if I look closely at that, I see I have a nice weld on top. It's going to be strong enough. I can flip it over and see how the penetration is. Again, maybe not enough penetration. I think I'm going to have to add more heat. Let's continue this with some more heat. So again, let's get our puddle started. I'm just going to continue from where we left off. And remember that your filler rod is going to get shorter the longer you weld. Just be aware of where you're holding it. Okay, puddle has started. I'm going to do a couple circle dip, circle dip, circle dip. My filler rod sometimes goes in between the flame and the metal. That kind of preheats it and then lets it drip into that little puddle. There we go, much nicer. I've increased the heat, or I increased the pressure. This is working lovely. Acetylene off, oxygen off. So not a bad weld. I'm a little bit rusty on this. I don't do this as often since I've been using a MIG welder, but I think this is going to be strong enough. Let's clamp it into a vise and smack it with a hammer and see how it holds up. It's clamped in. Let's grab our hammer. That's much stronger than the first one. Let's hit it from both sides. So depending on its use, this would be a fine weld. I think we need to go get a bigger hammer. So we got an 8-pound sledge. Let's try that one. Now it is bending a little bit, but the weld is still holding. Let's get a closer look at that. Not too bad, it's still holding up pretty good. Now just for fun, let's turn off this whole setup. I'm going to start by purging the valves. So to purge the valves, I'm going to close my acetylene first. Close that till it's tight. I'm going to roll back my regulator, the minus, or in this case counterclockwise. Open my acetylene to make sure all the gas is left the acetylene valve. Empty. If you look closely at here, it'll be reading 0. Next, oxygen. Turn it off all the way. Clockwise, good. We want to get this to be empty, reading 0. I'm going to turn my valve back all the way, counterclockwise. Open my valve. And this should be going down to nothing. Turn it off, wrap it up for everybody else. Put your striker away. Clean up your mess. And practice every day.